Hey guys, this is Dave with Audio In. Today we're going to be talking about the Tanchjim One, which is Tanchjim's latest budget single dynamic driver IEM. I haven't heard much about this one on social media, so this one is a little bit of a mystery to me, but hey, that's okay. I always get excited for any new release, especially when it comes to budget IEMs. As for what's included in the box, we have the IEMs, of course. It also comes with a decent assortment of tips and a soft carrying case. As for the price, specifications, and design, the Tanchjim One comes in at $25. It has a single dynamic driver configuration, and the housing is actually a bullet style shape. It's made from medical grade resin. It has a 2-pin detachable cable, which that's very cool. This is the 3.5 millimeter version, but there's also a Type-C version that has the built-in DSP similar to the Zero. The design is simple, and while it is obviously built and designed using budget materials, it actually feels fairly robust, and it's generally well built for the price. It's small and light. I didn't have any issues achieving a good fit or seal, and I was able to wear them for quite some time without experiencing any discomfort. Okay, let's move on to the sound. Okay, let's talk about the sound of the Tanchjim One. So, as usual, when I'm going through my normal review process, I'll do some comparisons, and since this is priced at $25, of course, I started digging out all of my similarly priced IEMs like the Chew and the Chew 2, but I also pulled out a few slightly more expensive IEMs like the Ola Bass, the Moondrop Lawn, because if I feel like it's punching above its weight, then I need to start comparing it with more expensive IEMs. So I was doing my comparisons, and eventually I got to the Ola Bass, and I have to say I was hearing a lot of similarities between the two. So I found both of the graphs on SquigLink and I overlaid them, and sure enough, they do have very similar tunings, which is basically neutral. The Ola Bass has a little more upper mid and treble presence and a little less bass, but its general presentation is quite comparable to the One. And while I did prefer the treble presentation of the Ola Bass just a little more, its mid-range is still a little too forward, and I actually felt like the mid-range tuning of the Tanchjim One was a little closer to my preference and even sounded just a little more natural. And it also fits better as well. That was actually one of the issues, the small issues with the Ola Bass. But back to the Tanchjim One. If we break the sound down further, starting with the bass presentation, in my opinion, tends to lean quite neutral. But the bass quantity as a whole is actually just about where I like it, especially when contrasted with the upper mid and treble levels. So when you step back and look at its overall presentation, it's generally balanced. And again, I think the bass levels are just about right. It has good bass extension, so it has adequate sub-bass rumble. And while again, the bass does have a more neutral style presentation, it does have a little more mid-bass presence, which gives you adequate kick drum slam and punch. And of course, this is a dynamic driver, so it's also going to provide that nice dynamic presentation, even some of that visceral sensation that I like to hear in a dynamic driver. Now, there is some bass bleed into the mids, so it doesn't have the cleanest transition from the mid-bass into the mids, which does affect, again, it affects that mid-bass texture and low-mid clarity. But again, we are talking about an ultra-budget IEM, and while it doesn't have the most detailed mid-range, it does still sound relatively natural, so instrument timbre is pretty good. The mid-range presentation has a little more of a smooth presentation. Vocals are still a little more forward, but slightly less forward than the Ola Bass. And as you move into the treble, you do have a drop-off right after 8K, and then a small bump at 10K, then a pretty large bump around 15K. So you have quite a bit missing between 8 and 15K. And while the 15K bump does add some air and it brings out some of that energy in the treble region. I think because of that reduced amount of presence between 8K and 15K, the overall treble presentation can come across as a little bit thin and unnatural sounding. But again, we are talking about a $25 IEM. As for technical performance, it's about what you might expect at this price. So it's honestly just okay. The sound stage is about average, although the upper treble presence does help give it a little bit more of an open presentation. Imaging is not very focused and instrument layering is below average. And of course, detail levels are decent for the price, but again, it's about what you might expect for $25. Now, as for comparisons, I'm skipping right to the comparison with the One because this is currently my favorite ultra budget IEM. And it's pretty hard to find a decently tuned ultra budget IEM, or at least what I would consider to be a well-tuned ultra budget IEM. But with the One, the bass is relatively clean, the mid-range is fairly clean, and it presents vocals and instruments pretty naturally at this price. And again, it's my favorite IEM around the $20 price point. And when I think back to when I reviewed the Ola bass, I remember thinking, if the Ola bass was just a little less expensive, then we could have another ultra budget contender. And now we have the Tanchjim One. And I have to say, the One is pushing extremely close to the One in terms of tuning. But I do think the One still edges it out ever so slightly. And I attribute that to its cleaner bass presentation, and the mid-range, while being a little more forward, still sounds just a little more natural to me than the One. That being said, I do prefer the treble presentation of the Tanchjim One. It has just a little more treble definition, air, and sparkle. And to be honest, this is a tough call for me because I could be very happy with either one of these as a budget IEM that I can just throw in my pocket. So technically I could call this a tie, but I still think I prefer the One's more natural presentation. And again, its bass and mid-range presentation is just a little cleaner in my opinion. But either way, that at least puts the Tanchjim One positioned at a respectable, very close second place. And I have to say, it's refreshing and encouraging to see the direction that ultra budget IEMs and the ultra budget market is trending towards. So of course, that means the Tanchjim One gets a very strong recommendation. I think this is a solid IEM for the price. So that concludes my review of the Tanchjim One. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch. If you like my content, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you would please like this video, please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.